Beloved, so many of us think that worship is something we do on Sunday mornings, when the music plays, when the choir sings, when the preacher stands to deliver the word. But oh, how limited that understanding is. Worship isn't confined to a building or a moment. It is the very breath of a life surrendered to God. It is the overflow of a heart that has encountered His glory and can do nothing but respond in every moment, in every action. When the Apostle Paul wrote, "Present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God. This is your spiritual worship," Romans 12:1. He wasn't just speaking to the priests or the ministers. He was speaking to every believer, to you, to me, calling us to a life where every step, every word, every decision becomes an offering laid at the feet of Jesus. Think about it. What does it mean to truly honor God in every action? It means waking up in the morning and before your feet even touch the floor, your heart whispers, "Lord, this day is yours." It means walking into your workplace not just to earn a paycheck, but to carry the presence of God into that space. It means cooking a meal for your family with the same devotion as if you were setting a table before the King, because in truth you are. When we begin to see our ordinary moments as sacred, everything changes. I've seen men and women who thought they had no ministry, no grand calling. Yet they honored God in the quietest ways. A smile to a stranger, a prayer whispered over a sick child, a decision to walk away from gossip, a choice to forgive when everything in them wanted to hold on to bitterness. That, my friends, is worship. That is a life that honors God. But let me tell you something. Worship isn't just about what we do, it's about who we are when no one is watching. You can sing every hymn with perfect pitch, but if your heart is far from Him, it's just noise. God isn't looking for performers. He's looking for worshipers, those who will bow low in spirit and say, "Not my will, but yours be done." I remember a story, it stirs me every time, of a woman who had nothing but 2 small coins to give at the temple. The religious leaders walked by her, hardly noticing, but Jesus stopped everything to point her out. "She has given more than all the rest," He said. Why? Because she gave all she had. That's worship. That's honor. It's not about the size of the action, but the surrender behind it. Some of you today might be thinking, "But my life is so small. What difference can I make?" Oh dear heart, don't you see? God doesn't measure your worship by how loud it is, or how many see it. He measures it by the love behind it. A mother rocking her child to sleep with a prayer on her lips, that's worship. A businessman choosing integrity over a dishonest gain, that's worship. A teenager standing alone for righteousness in a crowd that mocks God, that's worship. And here's the glorious truth. When we live this way, God responds. He inhabits the praises of His people. He draws near to those who draw near to Him. You want to see His power in your life? Honor Him in everything. Not just in the sanctuary, but in the kitchen, in the office, in the grocery store, in the traffic jam, in the season of waiting. So today I ask you, is your life a living sacrifice? Are your moments, your breaths, your choices an offering to Him? Because when we live with a heart of worship, we don't just honor God, we magnify Him, and the world can't help but take notice. Let this be the day you surrender it all, not just your songs but your life, to the one who is worthy. Oh, child of God, there is something so powerful, so transformative, about a life that doesn't just know the word but lives it. Jesus Himself said, "If you love me, keep my commandments." John 14:15. Not if you love me, sing about me. Not if you love me, talk about me, but keep my commandments. Because true love for God isn't measured by emotion, it's measured by obedience. Some people want the blessings of God without the surrender. They want the promises without the process. But beloved, obedience is the doorway to His presence. It's the key that unlocks His power in our lives. You can't claim to honor God while ignoring His word. It's like saying you love the sun but walking in darkness. The two cannot coexist. I think of Abraham. Oh, what a man of faith. But do you know what made his faith real? Obedience. When God said go, he went, even when he didn't know where. When God said sacrifice, he raised the knife, trusting that the Lord would provide. And because of that obedience, God called him friend. Not because Abraham was perfect, but because he was willing. Some of you today are waiting for a sign, for a feeling, for some grand confirmation before you step out in obedience. But let me tell you, God has already spoken through His word. You don't need another word when He's given you the word. If He's told you to forgive, forgive. If He's told you to give, give. If He's told you to walk away from sin, walk away. Delayed obedience is still disobedience, and partial obedience is no obedience at all. I've seen too many believers who treat the Bible like a buffet, picking and choosing what suits them, what feels comfortable, what doesn't cost too much. But God doesn't honor selective obedience. He honors full surrender. When Joshua stood before the Israelites, he didn't say, "Choose for yourselves this day what parts of God's commands you'll follow." No, he thundered, "Choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve." Joshua 24:15. Because you can't serve God and your own desires. Let me ask you, what is that one thing God has been speaking to you about? That habit He's asked you to lay down? That relationship He's told you to walk away from? That step of faith He's been nudging you to take? Why are you waiting? Every moment you hesitate is a moment you rob yourself of His best. Oh, but here's the beauty. Obedience isn't a burden. It's a privilege. It's not about rules. It's about relationship. When Jesus said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light," Matthew 11:30, He wasn't lying. The world tells us that God's commands are restrictive, but the truth is they're liberating. They free us from the chaos of our own ways and align us with His perfect will. I think of Peter, that rough fisherman, standing in a boat after a long night of catching nothing. Jesus told him to cast his nets one more time. Now Peter could have said, "Lord, I'm tired. I've already tried. This doesn't make sense." But he didn't. He obeyed. And what happened? A catch so great the nets began to break. Luke 5:6. That's what happens when we obey, even when it doesn't make sense. God doesn't just meet us where we are. He exceeds our expectations. Some of you are facing situations right now where obedience feels costly. Maybe it's standing for truth when everyone else is compromising. Maybe it's walking in purity in a world that mocks holiness. Maybe it's giving when you feel like you have nothing left. But let me remind you, God never asks for obedience without promising His provision. He doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. And don't think for a moment that obedience is just about the big moments. It's in the small things, the daily choices, where true faithfulness is proven. The decision to speak life instead of gossip. The choice to honor your parents even when it's hard. The commitment to pray when no one sees. These are the moments that shape a life of obedience. I've seen men and women who thought they were too weak, too broken, too ordinary to be used by God. But when they simply said, "Yes, Lord," He did the impossible through them. Because God isn't looking for ability, He's looking for availability. So today I ask you, are you willing to lay down your excuses, your delays, your conditions? Willing to say, "Not my will, but yours be done," no matter the cost, because when you do, you won't just honor God, you'll walk with Him, and there is no greater place to be. Let this be the day your love for Him is proven not just in words but in action. Step out and watch what He will do. My dear friends, if there's one thing that pierces through the noise of this world, it's the radical, selfless love of Christ manifested through His people. You see, honoring God isn't just about what we refrain from doing. It's powerfully demonstrated in what we choose to do for others. Jesus didn't say they'll know you by your perfect theology, or they'll recognize you by your impressive worship. No, He said, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." John 13:35. That love isn't meant to stay as a warm feeling in our hearts. It's meant to roll up its sleeves and get to work. I think of the Good Samaritan, that beautiful picture of what it means to truly serve. While religious men passed by on the other side, it was the outcast, the one considered unworthy, who stopped to help. He didn't ask if the wounded man shared his beliefs. He didn't check his social status. He saw need, and he met it. That's the kind of love that honors God. It's not the love that calculates or keeps score, but the love that sees every person as someone Christ died for. Some of us have bought into the lie that serving is only for those with the title of minister or missionary. But let me tell you something. The most powerful ministry often happens far from pulpits and platforms. It happens in soup kitchens and nursing homes, in classrooms and cubicles, in neighborhoods and nurseries. Every time you choose to put someone else's needs before your own convenience, you're preaching a sermon more powerful than any words could convey. I've watched beautiful souls who thought they had nothing to offer become conduits of God's love in the simplest acts. The elderly woman who bakes cookies for her neighbors, the teenager who tutors younger kids after school, the businessman who mentors struggling young fathers. None of them have seminary degrees, but all of them are living out the gospel in ways that shake the gates of hell. Because when we serve, we're not just helping people, we're showing them Jesus. But we must be careful, beloved. Service that honors God isn't about earning approval or checking religious boxes. The Pharisees gave large offerings and made long prayers, but Jesus called them whitewashed tombs, Matthew 23:27. Why? Because their service came from pride, not love. True service isn't measured by how many people see it, but by how much love motivates it. That widow with her 2 mites gave more than all the rich, because she gave from her poverty. She gave her all. Mark 12:43-44. Some of you feel overwhelmed by the needs around you. You think, what difference can I make? Oh dear heart, never underestimate what God can do with your little. That meal you take to a grieving family, that hour you spend listening to a lonely soul, that dollar you give when it's all you have. In God's economy, nothing offered in love is ever small. He takes our fishes and loaves and feeds multitudes with them. And here's the beautiful mystery. When we serve others, we're actually serving Christ himself. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Matthew 25:40. That homeless man you gave a sandwich to, that was Jesus. That single mother you babysat for, that was Jesus. That prisoner you visited, that was Jesus. When we serve the least, we're touching the very heart of God. But let me warn you, this kind of service will cost you. It will cost your time, your comfort, your resources. There will be days when you feel poured out and empty. But oh, the joy of being spent for the kingdom. Paul said it best, I will very gladly spend and be spent for you. 2 Corinthians 12:15. That's the heart of true service. Not counting the cost, but counting it all joy to be used by God. Some of you are waiting for your big moment to serve God. Meanwhile, the divine appointments pass you by every day. That co-worker who needs encouragement, that neighbor who needs help with groceries, that stranger who needs a smile. Don't miss your ministry because you're looking for a stage. The most powerful platform may be your kitchen table, your workbench, or the sidewalk outside your home. I think of Dorcas, a woman whose entire ministry was making clothes for widows, Acts 9:36-42. When she died, the room was filled with people wearing the garments she'd made. No sermons, no miracles, just simple acts of love that changed a community. And when Peter raised her from the dead, do you know what she did? She went right back to serving, because that's what happens when you discover the joy of loving others. It becomes your life. So today, I ask you, whose burden can you carry? Whose tears can you wipe? Whose hunger can you feed? Don't let this day end without letting God love someone through you. The world is watching, hungry to see if our faith is real. Let's show them Jesus not just in our words, but in our hands and feet. When we serve with Christ's love, we don't just help people, we change eternity. One act of love at a time. My dear friends, there is a sound ringing across the heavens today. A call to a people who will walk in absolute integrity before God. Not just when the spotlight is on them. Not just when others are watching, but in the secret place where only the Father sees. For what we are in the dark is who we truly are. And God is looking for those whose private life matches their public profession. You see, the world can spot a counterfeit a mile away. They're not impressed by Sunday morning religion if Monday through Saturday tells a different story. But oh, when they see a life that's consistent, when they see a man who treats his employees with the same respect he shows at church, when they see a woman whose speech is just as pure in the marketplace as it is in the prayer meeting, that stops them in their tracks. That's when they begin to ask, what is different about this person? Daniel understood this. When the king's decree tried to force him to compromise, he didn't make a grand show of defiance. He simply kept doing what he had always done, praying 3 times a day with his window open. Daniel 6:10. His integrity wasn't a reaction to pressure. It was the overflow of a life already surrendered. And because of that, when the lions came, God shut their mouths. Beloved, integrity isn't just about doing right. It's about being right with God, so that when the test comes, you don't have to scramble to fake it. You're already living it. But let me ask you, where are the areas no one sees? The thoughts you entertain when you're alone. The websites you visit when no one's looking. The way you handle money when the offering plate isn't passing by. That's where true integrity is proven. The world says if no one finds out, it doesn't matter. But God says, I see and I matter more than their opinion. I think of Joseph. Oh, what a man of integrity. When Potiphar's wife tried to seduce him, he didn't weigh the consequences or consider how he could get away with it. He simply said, how then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? Genesis 39:9. He wasn't just avoiding sin. He was protecting his fellowship with the Father. Because here's the truth. Every compromise, no matter how small, creates distance between us and God. But every choice to walk in purity, even when it costs us, draws us nearer to his heart. Some of you are facing tests right now. Opportunities to cut corners, to shade the truth, to indulge just this once. The enemy will whisper, it's not that big of a deal. But I'm here to tell you, it is a big deal. Because integrity isn't about the size of the compromise. It's about the principle behind it. A crack in the dam may seem small at first, but it's enough to bring the whole wall down. And let's not fool ourselves. Integrity will always be tested. It's easy to be honest when the cashier gives you too much change and you're in the church parking lot. But what about when you're struggling to pay bills and no one would ever know? That's the moment that reveals who you really are. That's the moment heaven leans in to see what you'll do. But here's the beautiful thing. Integrity isn't a burden. It's a shield. When you walk in complete honesty before God and man, you disarm the enemy's accusations. Satan may slander you, people may misunderstand you, but your clear conscience before God is your anchor. Like Job, you can say, till I die, I will not deny my integrity. Job 27:5. I've watched too many gifted men and women shipwreck their calling because they thought they could compartmentalize their lives. They thought they could preach with power on Sunday and flirt with sin on Monday. But God is not mocked. What we sow, we will reap. Galatians 6:7. The seeds of compromise always bear bitter fruit. Yet for those who choose the narrow road, oh, the reward is glorious. The integrity of the upright guides them. Proverbs 11:3. Not the approval of man, not the temporary gain of deception, but the peace of knowing you're right with God. There's no substitute for that. So today, I ask you, where do you need to realign? What hidden corners of your life need the light of God's truth? Don't wait until the storm hits to build your character. Start now, in the small things, the unseen choices, and when the test comes, you won't just survive, you'll shine. For when we walk in integrity, we don't just honor God, we reflect Him. And in a world full of counterfeits, that kind of consistency is more powerful than any sermon. Let your life be the proof of His goodness. There comes a moment in every believer's life when the ground beneath you shakes, when the storm rages louder than the promises you've clung to, when the only thing left to do is trust, not because you see the way out, but because you know the one who holds the way in His hands. Some of you are standing in that moment right now. The medical report didn't come back clean. The marriage feels like it's hanging by a thread. The finances are stretched thinner than you ever imagined possible. And heaven seems silent. The enemy whispers, where is your God now? But I'm here to declare, He is right there in the middle of your storm. And He is asking you one question. Will you trust me? You see, faith isn't faith until it's all you're holding on to. Anyone can praise God when the sun is shining and the path is clear. But the kind of trust that honors him isn't born on mountaintops. It's forged in valleys. It's the Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego kind of faith that says, even if he doesn't deliver us, we will not bow. Daniel 3:18. It's the Job-like surrender that whispers through tears. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Job 13:15. That's the trust that moves the heart of God. We love to quote Proverbs 3:5, mind 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. But do we really understand what that means? It means when the bank account says no, but God says I am your provider, you don't panic. It means when the doctor's report says incurable, but God says I am your healer, you don't crumble. It means when the world says give up, but God says stand firm, you dig your heels into his promises, like an anchor in a hurricane. I think of Abraham, the father of our faith, standing over his son Isaac with a knife in his hand. Every human instinct must have screamed, this can't be right. But Abraham had learned something many of us still struggle with. God's ways are higher than ours. Isaiah 55:9. What looks like destruction to us is often divine preparation in his hands. And because Abraham trusted, God provided the ram. But here's what we often miss. Trust isn't passive. It's not sitting back and doing nothing, waiting for God to drop miracles from the sky. True trust obeys even when it doesn't understand. When Jesus told Peter to cast his nets again after a fruitless night of fishing, Peter could have argued. But he said, at your word I will. Luke 5:5. His trust wasn't in his own experience. It was in the voice of his master. And because he acted in trust, he reaped a harvest that overwhelmed him. Some of you are paralyzed today because you're waiting for God to show you the entire plan before you take a single step. But faith doesn't demand a roadmap. It follows the guide. Remember the Israelites at the Red Sea. God didn't part the waters until their feet touched the edge. Exodus 14:15. Why? Because trust requires movement. You'll never see the miracle if you refuse to step toward the impossible. And let me tell you something. The enemy hates a trusting heart. He'll bombard you with what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. He'll remind you of every time things didn't go the way you hoped. But child of God, your past disappointments are not the measure of God's faithfulness. His track record is perfect. Has he ever failed you? Has he ever abandoned you? Look back over your life. Every time you thought it was over, he was working behind the scenes. I've watched saints in their darkest hours rise up with a trust so fierce, it shook the gates of hell. Cancer couldn't steal their praise. Bankruptcy couldn't silence their worship. Betrayal couldn't harden their hearts. Why? Because they knew something the world doesn't. God is faithful even when our circumstances aren't. When you can say with Habakkuk, though the fig tree does not bud, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. Habakkuk 3:17-18. You've discovered the unshakable place of trust. So today, whatever storm you're facing, I challenge you, trust him. Not just for the outcome you're praying for, but regardless of the outcome, trust that he is good even when life isn't. Trust that his plans for you are perfect. Even when the path is painful, trust that what he has allowed he will redeem. For when we trust God in the dark, our faith becomes a light that leads others home. And that is how you honor him. Not by having all the answers, but by surrendering to the one who does. Let your life declare, I don't set need to see the way. I know the way maker. Step out in trust and watch what he will do. Oh, beloved, there is a fire that burns within the heart of God, a passion for souls that should consume every fiber of our being. We sing of his love. We testify of his goodness. But tell me, when was the last time you looked into the eyes of someone who doesn't know Christ and felt your heart shatter with the urgency of eternity? This is not a suggestion, it's a commission. Jesus didn't say, go if you feel like it, or make disciples when it's convenient. He said, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Mark 16:15. That means the cashier at the grocery store. That means your co-worker who mocks your faith. That means the relative who's heard it all but still hasn't surrendered. There are no exceptions, because there are no unimportant souls. I think of Paul, that mighty apostle, who said, woe is me, if I do not preach the gospel. 1 Corinthians 9:16. Not because he was paid to, not because it made him popular, but because he understood people are dying without Christ. And if we truly believe what we say we believe, how can we stay silent? How can we hoard this hope when millions are drowning in despair? Some of you say, but I don't know enough scripture. My friend, you don't need a theology degree to share what Jesus has done for you. That demon-possessed man in Mark 5. The moment he was set free, Jesus told him, "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you." Mark 5:19. No training, no polished speech, just testimony. Your story of redemption is more powerful than you realize. Others say, "I'm afraid of rejection." Oh, but what if Peter had let fear silence him at Pentecost? What if the early church had hidden in upper rooms instead of turning the world upside down? Acts 17:6. The gospel has always been offensive to those who are perishing, but it's the power of God to salvation. Romans 1:16. And if we're more concerned with being liked than with souls being saved, we've lost sight of what matters. Let me ask you, do you remember who shared Christ with you? Was it a grand sermon or a simple conversation? A street preacher or a grandmother's prayer? God uses ordinary people who are willing to open their mouths. That woman at the well in John 4, she wasn't a scholar, she wasn't even morally upright. But after one encounter with Jesus, she ran back to her village and said, "Come see a man." And because of her testimony, many believed. John 4:39. Some of you are waiting for a special anointing to witness. But you're already anointed. You have the Holy Spirit living inside you. 1 John 2:20. The early church didn't have microphones or social media. They had obedience and boldness, and the world took notice. When was the last time your faith made someone uncomfortable enough to ask you why you're different? If we're blending in, we're failing our mission. I think of Esther, standing before the king, trembling yet resolved. If I perish, I perish. Esther 4:16. She risked her life to save her people. What are we risking? Our reputation? Our comfort? We're not facing death for speaking Christ's name. Yet so many act like we are. In nations where believers are persecuted, they share the gospel anyway, because some things are worth losing everything for. And here's the beautiful truth. When we step out in boldness, God meets us. He doesn't call the equipped. He equips the called. Remember Moses, "I can't speak well, but God said, I'll be with your mouth." Exodus 4:10-12. Your weakness is the perfect platform for his strength. So today, look around you. That neighbor watering his lawn, eternity is in his heart. That teenager scrolling through her phone, she's searching for what only Christ can give. The harvest is ripe, but where are the workers? Matthew 9:37. Don't let another sunset without someone hearing from your lips that Jesus saves. Not with condemnation, but with compassion. Not with pressure, but with passion. Because time is short, hell is real, and we are their only hope. When we stand before God one day, he won't ask how many people liked us. He'll ask how many heard from us. Let your life be a megaphone for the gospel starting today. For when we open our mouths for him, heaven opens its windows over us. Speak boldly and watch what he will do.